Hi, everyone.
How you
Hello.
doing? I assume you guys can see the screen. If not, well, if you can, someone let me know. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah,
Hi, everyone.
we can see this.
Okay, thanks. All right, we're going to give everyone about 1 more minute. Okay, let's get started. This is the December 6th ORAN integration meeting. What I currently have is 4 items on the agenda. One is to review the previous minutes. The second one is maybe some information that you might not be aware of, but I thought was good information for the team to know about some modeling work that the Working Group 4 modeling team is in the process of doing. And then we got some user stories that we got ready for the team to review. I'm waiting on Alexis, who said he's going to be late. So when we get to that, we need Alexis to lead us through that. So there's 3 user stories that are done. You remember we have a number of user stories that are still in process. And then we need to discuss some of this staffing for the SMO for the next stage, the development stage for this thing. Is there any other items on the agenda that someone wants to add? All right, I don't see any hands raised.
Yeah, nothing to add, Tim, but thanks for bringing that item for information. I wasn't aware about the information or the data model discussions that are happening. Is it still under review, or has that been?
Let me finish. Let me get to that point, and I'll
Okay.
because I actually got a show of it. So with you in mind, Alok, I was like, oh, Alok needs to know this.
yeah. So I started going through the document itself, and yeah, it's pretty good and quite comprehensive.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing it.
Sure. All right. So any other agenda items that people want to add? Okay. All right. So the November 29th meeting minutes, again, I do my best, but probably fail miserably. Here's what we discussed with my notes that I had. If there's other things that the notes aren't correct, you can certainly modify them here. But I'm asking if we can go ahead and agree to and approve these notes that we took for the November 29th. Okay.
One point, Tim. I mean, following up from the last meeting, I had kind of had one comment on Slack, and there's no discussion on that. So probably wanted to kind of see if people had any opinion on that.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's add that as an agenda item if you want to this.
Sure.
To today, right?
Yeah, sure. Sure, it'd be good.
Discuss, and I don't know what it is yet. You'll tell me. Agenda item.
It was basically the suggestion was to kind of rename the what did you call it as, the southbound API adapter to something to reflect the fact that it will be driven by vendor plugins or some operators.
All right, so I'm just going to put it as the agenda item. southbound adapter, right? And we'll give you 5 minutes. Or do you think you need more than
yeah.
that?
No. It should be fine. I think. I think I kind of
Okay.
people might have read the comment on Slack. So
Okay. So I'll actually do that before Alexis gets in to do that because I think we're waiting on him. Okay. So any objections to approving the November 29th minutes? Okay, I'll mark those approved. Now, as I was saying, just some information. You might want to. The working group 4 team has gone to this and has started the process of trying to figure out how we document our models. And I think what they for various purposes. There's a presentation on that slide. What do we want to use modeling for? But what Tal had done was he actually went back and looked at the GitHub piece of it, the actual deployment in GitHub, and looked through all the CRDs that were in there and started pulling them out and creating what I thought was a nice, I don't care how it gets documented, whether it's plant UML or I don't care, but has a nice document based upon his conventions, right, of the different groups of CRDs from topology and it shows, what's multi-instance and what is contained, what is related. So it gives a good overview of just all the different objects that is necessary to make Nephio go, to use a better term, right? And so these are things that you would be, if you're doing development within Nephio, you would want to be intimately aware of and knowledgeable in to that regard, right? And so it talks about workflows as well, the NF deployments and stuff like that. And what I'm suggesting to the group is that you do look at this. Gets to the infrastructure stuff that I was talking to Alok was like, oh, he needs to see this because in ORAN they're actually working on an information model that that I would hope would be adaptable and minimally to what the work that Nephio is doing, right? And so it goes through all these, right? And I'm not sure what the landscape is just yet. But anyway, so this is the existing model. So it actually was making, it was looking good. I asked Tal as I was reviewing this, I made a couple comments because I was worried about one or two things on it. But I asked Tal, I said, when reviewing this model, because I'm going to ask you all to review the model. When reviewing this model, is there anything that specifically what you want us to try to comment on? What's important to them, right? And so Tal's response is this, and I'll just put this response back to here, right? Is that he says, you can comment on anything that's important to you. He's just starting to analyze the model. That's the purpose for bringing that thing out, right? So it's asking questions about duplication, separation concerns, that whole business of what they're trying to do with the modeling effort. So it's also missing some explanations. But if you find, any particular mistakes in there, my point is just go ahead and, from what I get from Tal, is just go ahead and comment of what's of interest to you. So if you got questions or you see something to be incorrect, you can modify or you can comment on it, and then they can take that in, right? Because again, what he did was he went through the GitHub aspects, and some of the relationships or some of the constraints may very well be in the Go, not in the CRDs themselves. So the associated code and not in the CRD itself. So there might be some stuff that's missing that maybe you can add some value to. So I really do recommend that you do look at this. It's an enlightening model that shows how kind of the CRDs kind of fit together. So any questions on that? Alok, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Sure. So I'll start reviewing more closely the document. I didn't saw the comments now when you're scrolling through. I saw a couple of them that you had posted. So I'm assuming it's still open for review and they are being discussing.
Yeah,
right?
this is just Yeah, this just came out. Tal had an action item to go out and look at what we currently have. So that's what this was, right? So they're using it, I would suspect, as a starting point for the modeling piece. And so it would just came out today. So
Right.
they're very open to receiving comments back.
Yeah. And all these boxes and various different, I would say, components or yeah, the entities, right? They are all within the management or workload cluster within OCloud. Or
Yes, they're all OCloud. So careful. Now you're
yeah,
talking
I mean
ORAN concepts, right?
yeah,
So this, so
like
again, these are Nepio constructs, right? That are used to document the CRs, right? That'll be in the OCloud, but it's also used as part of the as it travels down the path, right? There's injection points and everything else. So I don't know strictly if it's OCloud. I doubt that you could strictly call it OCloud because there are also object representations that would be considered part of the
yeah.
SMO. As
I mean,
as
the
it makes the
reason,
journey.
yeah, the reason I was asking is like you are well aware about the information model discussions happening in the ORAN, and there we are like kind of building some sort of a holistic view where we have the OCloud node cluster, then it has the entities like the network fabric and site network and how it has to be provisioned and orchestrated. But here, I believe it's more related to the Kubernetes cluster and what are the different entities that exist within that, whether it is a workload cluster or a management cluster.
Yeah, yeah, but again, it's you specifically talked about OCloud, right? I mean, ultimately, the end hosting place of it, that when it's finally rests, right, is an OCloud, either the management cluster or the workload cluster. That makes sense, right?
Okay.
But I mean, it's going to start just like it starts its deployment in the in the SMO, right?
Yeah.
Gets
Okay, I'll
injected
review and
throughout.
then yeah, I'll add some comments, especially around the infrastructure section. I do have some comments for further clarification. But thanks for the
Yeah,
pointer.
but and I would certainly look at that documents, as you go through it and ask, just the questions because you have to kind of understand the flow of how they're using these CRs, right? Particularly as the injection points are looked. Okay. Robbie?
Hey, Tim, is there any scope for, is it like scoped for R1, R2? Is there anything like that? Because there are
No,
many
no,
CRs,
this is
right?
this is all what he did currently, right? So my assumption is you could ask that question. My assumption is that he took the R2, what they're working on, right? Because he just pulled it from GitHub. You can see where he pulled it from.
Got it. Okay. So because I saw network topology CR, there's been discussion since R1 and R2 too. But there are many other ones too. I mean, there's all those package variant sets and all that. So I'm just thinking, is this one document to include everything or is
Uh,
it like,
you could ask him that
yeah, so,
question. You can ask him that question, Robbie. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not quite sure how they're doing that piece of it, right? So,
no problem. Yeah, sure.
yeah. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no issue. Yeah, I'll go through the document.
Again, it just came out. I go, oh, this could be some good stuff for people to understand context, right?
Got it.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the model? Okay. So let me finish the comment. Does have one, two, okay. And comment. Yeah. All right. So the next one that we're talking about is the user stories, and I'm hoping Alexis is. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to talk about the Slack item. So good. Oh, Seishu, you're on too. So Robbie, Seishu, the other point that now I see Seishu that you're on, could I add an agenda item? I just want to make sure that you guys are synced up on the user stories. So I'm going to just step back real quick, guys, and note, again, we've got these 6 user stories. We've got 3 of them complete, and 3, without someone did some work. My man Sager. All right. There's some that look like they're in progress, and some that are still need to be started. Seishu, could you talk about, and Ravi talk about how you guys want to handle the deploy the NFS with the SMO? I know that you guys got some coordination stuff. So, Ravi.
Yeah, no, from my end, I mean that I've been trying to reach Seshu. I mean that the Slack message that I had where you were also included, Tim, but I'm not sure if Seshu he has
He's
access
on.
to Slack or not. Yeah, so I don't have any other way to reach out to him. So yeah, I mean
Hi,
he
Ravi.
can.
I'm sorry, actually, I've been on and off last whole week. In fact, today also I'm supposed to be off. I just got the mail from Tim, so I joined here. I am not a Slack guy. Sorry for that. Yes, I told you my Slack doesn't work for some reason. I have, I mean, I can open up the WhatsApp. Ravi, do you use WhatsApp?
I do. Yeah. I do.
So I'll ping you my number and we can actually connect on WhatsApp. Slack, for some strange reason, I don't. Again, apologies, guys. I'll try to fix it. But for some strange reason, I was showing the same to Tim also when we were face to face. For some strange reason, Slack doesn't work for me actually. I mean, I don't know whether it's an app problem or my phone problem, or even I even changed the phone, but somehow it doesn't work. For sure, I'll give you my number. I'll just put that in this thing here, and we can connect over the WhatsApp. That should be really fine, Ravi.
Okay. Yeah. The only issue is that I'm driving right now. I can't actually.
Sure. I'll text you. I mean, I'm saying I'll put it on your email. Actually, you'll have it in next few seconds.
Yeah. Email it to me. That would be good. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, but guys, the reason why I sent the email was to make sure, because I wasn't sure, about the Slack situation. That's why I sent the email to you, also to you, Robbie, to your Gmail account, right? So,
okay. I didn't see that yet. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I just was using the emails I had. So, the point is that Seishu and Ravi and Sagar, I believe, were the 3. We're working on this particular use case that we need to get filled out in the next couple of weeks. So, Seishu and Ravi, I'm looking forward to you guys, working together to try to get this thing resolved, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we should have something by next call, I guess.
Yeah. Because there's a nice little template in there, Seishu. I don't think it'll be all that.
Sure. Okay. I've sent you my my mobile number and the WhatsApp number actually, Ravi. So in the same mail where Tim and Alex are also there. So I request you to reach out to me if that's more convenient for you, and then we can surely take it on. That's not a problem. By the way, on the other side, sure. I met Sagar last week in the ONAS India, and we shared a lot of ideas on how to proceed with this particular thing. So we will surely have them also as part of our coming up plan, both from workflow onboarding as well as the workload operator of it, how to do it, and also we will also talk about that. In fact, I'm trying to reach out to Alexi. I think Alexi is on leave today this week. So Tim, that part of it also is in progress. I was on and off. So once Alexian is back from his vacation, I'll be able to present that also. That's also one action item which is pending from us. Tim.
Yep, got it. No problems. I'm just the poker here. So
sure.
Trying to
I'm making sure that I have right. I'm making sure I don't get the second question because I know that is my action item too.
Yeah.
Making sure when I'm there, I take all the responsibilities and give you the status update of it.
Yeah. No worries, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks
okay. So again, I'm still waiting. So now, Ravi, we're back to your Slack item on Southbound. You want to discuss that? So you have a Slack item.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, the point is, I mean, what I had kind of described in that note on Slack. So it was basically my comment was around calling the southbound calling it as the southbound interface adapter, because we are not kind of doing any adaptation on the O2 IMS interface itself. So the other alternative, any variant of that, probably sort of is probably not in the context as such, right? So
Do you want to?
to
You
kind
want
of
to? You want to? Hey, Ravi, do me a favor. Take over
yeah.
sharing and share what you're talking about, right? So people can get some context.
I know, but as I'm driving, this time is really bad for me.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
in the
So
car
what? No,
dropping off kids to school right now. So,
no worries. What do you want me to show, right? So people can know what you're talking about.
oh
You
yeah,
want
I mean,
you?
if you just open up the architecture diagram, the latest one that we all
Okay.
have
It's there.
have consensus on. Yeah,
so you're
the
talking.
idea was that so
Go ahead.
so the I mean, within the management cluster, and we have the Nefio SBI adapter, right? So the reason why we called as, and for the northbound interface adapter, there was a specific reason why we kind of had that function there, so that you can adapt from the SMOS APIs into the intents that will be kind of developed within the Nefio, or within the context of FUCOM or NFO. So the southbound, the SPI adapter, the southbound interface adapter had, I mean, we are not incorporating any such functions there, or there's no such requirement there. It's basically just O2 IMS. Rather, what I see is that, the southbound, I mean, you would be having multiple O clouds from multiple O cloud vendors, and you might have different kind of operators from these vendors to kind of invoke the O2 IMS, or basically that would leverage the O2 IMS to handle all the operations that's within the scope of IMS, right? So my suggestion was to kind of, instead of calling it as Nefio southbound interface adapter, to call it as kind of a Nefio plugin or vendor plugin, or to call it something else other than the southbound interface adapter. Because we are not doing any adaptation on the interface itself, right? So.
Yeah. So this came from both. The agreement was through the Ericsson folks. Alok has his hand raised.
Yeah, so maybe if I can take that up. Yeah, so we had contributed that and presented in one of our workgroup 2 meeting. I mean, I don't have any strong opinion about naming. We, like you said, Ravi, we can call it something like Nefio Southbound plugin or something, since at least how I draw in my head, the picture would look like something as a short term versus a long term view, right? So for the short term, there will be cloud provider, cloud platform provider corresponding plugins that can be plugged in, and you can actually have the provisioning related operations or any sort of IMS related services to be supported through that vendor specific plugins.
Exactly.
Then,
That's what my
right,
idea is. Yes. Call it probably southbound plugin should
yeah,
be
so
good.
I think it's just like we had the northbound adapter, and then I think maybe it was copy paste, or I think we just followed the same trajectory.
So, but let me make sure I understand just real quick. So I see Seishu's on, right? So I'm going to ask him a question. Seishu, with OSC, with respect to the FOCOM and NFO, are these going to be plugins or just simply an adaptation interface? Because plugins have a connotation, right? And I just want to make sure that the actual OSC code, the intention is to have that plugin connotation to it.
See, OSC tries to replicate what is coming from Oran Alliance, and Oran Alliance right now gives standard interfaces for the FOCOM to IMS, right?
Right.
So the adapter, the word we have used, adapter or plugin, should be in line to that the Oran Alliance specific spec that comes out of that, right? Northbound part of it, yeah, I understand that is still going on. That is the discussion which we are having in the Nefio group, sorry, in the Oran group. Work group 1 is working on service orchestration part. That is something which is there. But at least for the SBA part, which is the IMS piece, is something which Oran is actually has already gone way ahead. And that part of it.
But isn't it like ORAN that, like you said, it's an alliance, it's a standardization body versus the NIFIO, we have more
Yeah,
of a
look, I was just answering.
implementation. Yep.
Yes, I'm just answering what Tim has asked me about the ORAN part, ORAN Alliance part, right? He was talking from OSC perspective. My answer, he is actually from OSC perspective alone. Look, yes, I understand. In fact, I
Because
also
I think,
said this.
yeah, the
Because
adapter or
that's
plugin
hang on.
that,
Hey,
yeah.
Alok, just a second. Because the reason why I asked that question, right? I don't want to get too standardies here, right? Because the source code, the implementation that we're going to use for the NEFIO POC on this is from the the ORAN software community. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that, when we talk about a plugin, there's a connotation for a plugin. So, a plugin's a plugin. It's going to be a plugin, right? Whereas an adapter is kind of open. It's like how you want to do your stuff. And so if Seishu, if the FOCOM function, right, isn't a plugin type of southbound function, then I'd have a problem calling this a plugin because it's not a plugin. It's just an adapter, right, which is a generalization of a plugin. So help me understand if this is going to be a plugin where I actually create a plugin and I plug it in, or is it just a general adaptation layer?
Yeah, so maybe I can give an example, right? So FOCOM realized through some sort of a copy-based cluster, let's say, right? So you can have a copy cluster that can have multiple sorts of, or that can support a pluggable architecture, and that supports a pluggable architecture today. And you can have multiple different provider plugins that can be supported by that copy cluster, which is realizing the FOCOM functionality, right? And that's a short-term solution. Versus the long-term would be you have a common O2 IMS aligned plugin, and all the cloud platform providers who are compliant to the ORAN architecture would support the O2 IMS plugin data model, right? The one which will be coming from the ORAN Alliance, right? And that will be the common interoperable plugin to be used by a vendor supporting or providing the FOCOM functionality versus the IMS realization by some cloud provider vendor.
Yeah, I agree with that. What Alok said. So the way it's going to work is that you're going to take a very high level intent, and then you're going to map those intent to certain blueprints, and those blueprints are going to point to certain southbound implementation specific operators that's going to invoke your O2 IMS kind of functionality. So that can be kind of coming from multiple sources, from vendors, or it could be a standardized implementation and so on. So in that sense, I think the southbound is going to be kind of very specialized based on who the kind of the O cloud provider is, or
But Ravi, I'm not arguing that. I'm asking Seishu if the current software is a plug-in software, is it just an adaptation software?
But the current software is probably not even written considering NEFIO's.
Well, Ravi, you don't know that. Let me ask Seishu, because he's got the
sure,
No, current is not written. Yeah, actually, I'll say this way. See, it's following the ORAN Alliance part, as I said, and ORAN Alliance is actually maturing on that part of it, right? So I'll put it this way, that the current thing which is coming from the INF piece of the OSC is pluggable, but it is following what the ORAN Alliance is actually talking about. Having said that, I was just talking about that before, Alok, you were saying about this, right? So.
Okay. So then, until the ORAN Alliance defines the O2 IMS enough that that it's mature, let's say that, and stable, right? There would be a NEFIO southbound plugin that we would use. Is that accurate, Seishu?
Yeah, from NEFIO perspective, it makes sense. But if you're talking about OSC, where we try to adapt it, I mean, in the long run, we want to adapt it in OSC also, right? That's also one more thing we were talking about, right? Where on the panel, team. We want to reuse this
Yeah.
code. So we
Sure.
want to see how to make this best of it. In fact, this was one of the points which me and Sagar also were discussing on in terms of how to leverage what is there and how to take it on. So surely we'll see what can be the best solution for having this adopted.
All right. Yeah. For the diagrams, do you care if I call that a southbound plugin?
Adapter plugin, I think both of them can do the similar work, right? So what is the differentiation factor that you're talking about from plugin to adapter?
A plugin is something that I can actually just plug into a framework, right? An adapter, you have many choices of how you do adaptation. It could be part of the code or whatever.
I would call it something like GVNF and MSVNFM to be more to make it this one. Like I would rather say the generic one is actually what comes out of the system, and the specific one is something which is vendor specific, right? Something like that would be much more sense. Well, if you want to call it adapter plugin, I think it's up to the usage of it.
Okay.
I feel what comes out of the box should be more generic, and specific implementation of will be out of the box, which will be the vendor specific.
Yeah, but is that something that's going to get plugged into the FOCOM software? In other words, it's just registered and plugged in as a potential interface of FOCOM.
I don't want that to be standardized. That's what I'm saying. There's generic things to be standardized. What comes
No,
out of
it's not.
FOCOM
It's
should be
not.
standard. Yeah.
It's not standardized. It's just what is the
So I'm saying
software capability?
adapter for me makes much more sense because plugins, the moment you put plugins inside the FOCOM, you are actually getting into a mess of multi vendors and multiple support systems and multiple things and all, right?
Well,
So
you're
I would
going to have
rather
to
say
get into that
adapter.
mess anyway.
Yeah. So I would rather say adapter because adapter will be at least following a specific standard, right? Of how the adaptation should be. And that is
Okay.
what even
All right.
David Kinsey was talking about, right? I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So Anders, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was listening a bit. It seems almost from this discussion that we have two things to describe. Where this may be trying to describe a target where we have an AutoIMS, and we currently have an implementation which is not AutoIMS, and we have no adapter or plugin in the code.
That's a fair assessment.
Yep.
We're
So
dealing
maybe
with
this
reality
is,
here.
yeah, so maybe there should be a target picture and the current state somewhere.
So if it's a current state, this would be
Not existing.
Oh, no, because it's if I had to do a current state, I would call it a plugin.
Okay.
Because eventually that adapter will have to go away. Or that plugin would not be used. It would be the standard plugin would be used, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was driving at.
Okay. And then you would,
So,
when you use that plugin, you would not have IMS below. You would have a Nephew flavored IMS.
yeah, I'm not gonna. I get it, right?
No,
But give me a little grace.
yeah.
Instead of calling plugin, I mean, sorry to jump in this, but I think adapter makes much more sense to me there because you're adapting to a specific
It does
thought.
to me, and it doesn't give you a specific. It doesn't say what specifically you're dealing with at this point, right? Certainly from an architecture, that's why I liked adapter. But I mean, if the group says make it a plugin, I was like, oh, okay.
Is
Robbie,
the group calling it plugin? We can still call it adapter.
No, Robbie is suggesting that.
No, reason I was suggesting as a plugin is because of the heterogeneity of implementations that you might have. So then you might have different versions, different flavors of that implementations. It's not necessarily that it will be one standardized. I mean, you could.
Well, as Andrew
said,
said,
it's a long-term
software.
That is what is ORAN all about, right? We should not have so much of heterogeneity also at the entry point, at least I'm saying. Otherwise, the FOCOM itself will change. So I would rather say we can have a plugin adapter there, and adapter can actually have a way to different plugins to adapt to, right? That also is possible.
Oh,
inside the FOCOM,
okay.
Inside the FOCOM we can have adapter. I'm saying this way that you can have adapter inside the FOCOM. What comes out of the FOCOM is adapter, and then you will write your plugins to to match the adapter so that you can hook to it, right? The hook should not change, isn't it, Ravi?
Yeah, I mean, you could have multiple layers of software stack. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
trying to, I was trying to say
Okay,
that, okay,
so-
there is a layer of heterogeneity that you
Yes.
we have to
I'm with
adopt
you.
it, so-
Yeah, I'm getting it. But I'm saying if you put that within the FOCOM as a plugin, then you are actually getting a lot of too many flavors of those plugins. I'm saying at least
We're
what comes
just-
out of the FOCOM should be adapter, and then we can adapt to that using our own vendor specific. That should be mixed.
All right, so we're getting really
That makes
detailed into the FOCOM design that has an architectural design that we haven't done yet. So we got to be careful, guys, right? Because I think what happens will prove itself out in the design of the FOCOM. But Brandon, we got Brandon and Locke, and then I'm going to ask for what do we want to do next. So go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah. In my opinion, if not for the Nephew SBI adapter or if not for Nephew SBI plugin, what will FOCOM do without that? Are there any other adapters or are there any other plugins in the South apart from this O2IMS? That's my first question. For me, FOCOM is always talks, as per ORAN Alliance, O2IMS APIs only. So what it is adapting?
Yeah, so the problem is that we are ahead of what the ORAN Alliance has strictly specified for O2IMS. So we're putting a Nephew spin on this for now, right? There's some stuff the O2IMS has done, but for stuff like cluster creation and stuff like that, guess what? They haven't defined it, right? So the use cases that we're going at. So it's going to have a Nephew spin of this that we may very well, when O2IMS comes up, we're going to have to adapt the implementation towards, right? Once that's there, right? And so now we're in this, we're in the chicken and egg, and I'm just saying, give me a little grace right now with some of this naming, right? Because eventually it will converge once the interface is specified. And as Seishu said, was that the intention would be to get to the standard interface once it's specified. But Alok?
Yeah. So I'll keep it rather quick. I think, after listening to Seshu's comment, I do tend to agree, with the argument that since we wanted to march towards more generic, generalized way of handling and supporting the interoperability, so maybe let's keep it as SBI adapter and then adapt to what O2IMS will specify and define, right? And then answering, forget the previous comment. So I think the significance of having adapter / plugin here could be, we have the different adapters or the language that is being understood by the north of FOCOM versus the south of FOCOM. So there should be, but there needs to be some sort of an adaptation or model-to-model translation that has to happen between the FOCOM northbound and the southbound, because they are two different interfaces, and that's why we need the adaptation layers for both north and the south. Right?
Yeah. Then what does FOCOM do?
The FOCOM part, there is one thing. See, the adapter we are talking about is Nephew adapter, not FOCOM adapter. You're right. FOCOM only does IMS. The one we are talking about here is Nephew adaptation. That is a little different from the ORAN spec itself. So what we are talking about here is the functionality which comes out of Nephew, and like Tim said, right, we are talking about the parallel track of what ORAN Alliance is doing right now with respect to that, and anything that has to be done further to it, we will try to do it in Nephew. That's the whole purpose of having this. Otherwise, FOCOM actually, what FOCOM does right now as part of the standard alliance is actually just talks to IMS further.
Yeah. So I always believe FOCOM directly calls O2IMS. In the case of Nephew, it calls through the operator way. Maybe the top.
Yes, that operator way is actually adapted. So that's the reason why it's Nephew SBI adapter. It's not FOCOM adapter. It's Nephew SBI adapter.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. Hence, I'm actually saying it's adapter done plugin, because the moment you put plugin, your question becomes much more complex. So I'm saying it's adaptation right now. Yeah, then I think we are good.
Okay, so Ravi, So are you okay with just leaving it this, and it will get into the design? You can probably make further comments in the design choices.
Yeah, I was just thinking we want to let our interface adaptation.
You're breaking up, buddy.
Interface, there is adaptation from the protocol.
Ravi, you're breaking.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yeah, much better.
Can you hear
much
me
better.
now?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, sorry. I was there's hilly areas, No, I was saying that instead of the other the concern I was having, we call it interface adaptation. We are not adapting on the interface. We want to call it just a pure southbound adapter, because northbound interface adaptation has a specific connotation from basically saying, okay, you want to map some protocols and stuff to the intents. Do we want to still use the word interface there? Because there's no adaptation happening on the interface itself. Interface is O2 IMS, as I see it. that was my view.
Well, but the problem is that there's going to be non-standard pieces that go down that interface, right? And that's that are Nepio specific, because ORAN has not defined for example, the crate cluster. That's the point, right? We get down to it. There is no crate cluster. You can go into the O2 IMS spec. There's none there. There's going to be a Nepio piece of it until there's an O2 IMS piece of it, right? So it is adapting the interface, Robbie, just because the incompleteness of the O2 IMS. Okay.
So we are saying there are things outside O2 IMS that might also be that we are trying to indicate on that interface. Okay, no, I was thinking it's just O2 IMS, so otherwise out of scope. So okay, that's fine.
We're driving the stuff to O2 IMS, and we'll adapt to it. But there's going to be stuff that goes down there that isn't, because it isn't defined, right? So, okay, all right. So I think I'm gonna close on that to say we're gonna keep it the same. I see Alexis came in. Cool, my man. So we do have three use cases that are available. So Alexis, do you want to take over here? I'll stop sharing. Want to take over and start talking about your use cases? We have about 15 minutes.
Hey everyone. Yep, sure. I'll try to be succinct. Just give me 1 second. I need to open it up. And first of all, thank you for the comments that I received. Ravi, Alok, and some others. Much appreciated the comment. Let's make these use cases. Hang on. Community driven, right? So if you a couple of comments you'll see I replied. If you have some ideas, if you have some thoughts, feel free just to propose something, right? I don't want to be owning these user stories. It's all of us owning it. So that's my first general comment. So the use cases can you see my screen now? I assume you can.
Yeah, we can see, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the way I went to create these use cases, I went the easy route. Okay, let me explain. So I looked at the orchestration use case document that we have within ORAN, and I pretty much copy pasted the use case that is defined in there. So that's why that's some of the questions that I got were related to maybe some of that copy paste, but my goal here is to clarify a few things. So Alok, I see your very good point about the discussion about cluster templates and so on. I definitely agree with that. So if you don't mind identifying a way to make an addition, please do so. That would definitely help me. I definitely believe that regardless that addition, SIG2 will define something in the format of a CRD, and we will have a way to influence more or less what is the data model of the CRD. So that's why I didn't call it out necessarily, but you're right. I think a good call out is key to make sure that, and that might be as part of the requirement, that we want that object to be called cluster template. But I think that's something good that could be added. You're right.
Yeah, and just real quick, I think we still have some design principles, right, that we are using for R1 and R2, like the blueprints and the specializations and all those kind of things, and which very much aligns with the template concept we are discussing in the ORAN. So I was just thinking, like, maybe we can bring those the concepts that we have defined in Nephew and mention it in the feature overview section itself.
I'm thinking maybe in the design and architectural consideration.
Yeah, maybe that's even better. Yeah.
So would you be willing to make these additions?
I can give an attempt. Yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Alok.
Thank you.
The next comment I got is from Ravi, and so Ravi, that's a good point that you mentioned here. So just to recap for everyone, right? The point is about, within Nephew, we have the ability to deploy a cluster across cloud sites within an cloud, and the working group 6, right? The use case is about deploying a cluster, but it's not defined where it's going to be. So what my reply here, Ravi, is to say that it is more of and I know you added a comment down here about location. When the user, when the request is going to be made to the IMS to create the cluster, as part of that location field in the requirements of the request will be defined, what is expected. And so whether it's across sites or within one site doesn't really matter for the use case. We support all of the above, right? So here, that's why I'm saying the focus is really just to say that FOCOM sends one request to IMS, and that's it. To a targeted cloud, and then within the request is the detail about how that cluster should be realized. So I don't know, Ravi, if you are agreeing with this, or if there is any specific addition, or because I got your comment, but I don't know how to change what is written here, because I think it's your comment is somewhat addressed as part of what the requirement needs to provide.
Yeah, I was just thinking more from, again, the contract where you take a blueprint and actually fan out and specialize for multiple.
Ravi, you're breaking up at least for me.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Ravi, you're breaking a lot, so I cannot hear your.
Ravi said he's driving. Alexi, Ravi said he's driving, so perhaps that he's maybe in a zone where there's.
So Ravi, Ravi, we can iterate offline on your comment. I want to make sure we address it properly, but let's iterate offline if you're breaking. That way we can hear you better, or we can write.
Oh, am I breaking? Am I breaking
now?
You're
back.
Or?
You're back now. You're back now, Ravi.
Okay, I'm just switching Wi-Fi here. So sorry. Yeah. No, my comment was from the perspective of the fact that you have the Nephew platform itself gives you the ability to fan out a blueprint to multiple kind of realizations, right? So, and normally when we talk from an O2 IMS perspective, we are saying, okay, it's probably, I'm not sure if that's something because we have not probably gone into the stage 3 kind of APIs, but if something of that kind of richness is captured in that one request. So this is more coming from an FEO perspective. How do we kind of, because this use case has been defined in ORAN, and in ORAN most of the times it's basically saying, okay, there's a REST API, and of course the details are not been. But when you talk about FEO, because of the fact that okay, you want to handle this at scale, how do you kind of adapt this use case for NFUs? And it was coming from that perspective. Yeah. Now I haven't seen your response yet, Alexis, but so I mean, do we want to make this kind of more kind of these somewhere in this capture that okay, at the end of the day, it's going to be there are certain features that this particular intent might a certain I would say what is it certain requirements that this intent might satisfy. It is coming from that perspective.
So that's absolutely part of it, and part of this requirement, and you added a comment there as well about is it scoped to one or more OCloud site? And that's where in the requirement we have the location. And what I'm saying is this is where the user is going to say, what is the location? Is it one availability zone or many, one region or many, or just one site? And so this is where I see this information being provided.
Okay, sure. Okay.
So I believe
Yeah,
it is
probably,
captured
yeah.
as part of the intent that as part of the requirement that will drive the intent. I believe it's there today.
Okay. No, probably I was thinking we could generalize it to say that this could identify, I mean, the intents could actually identify instantiating clusters in multiple OCloud sites as such, right? I mean, so that could probably make it more clear.
Yeah, so if I quickly respond, sorry to cut you, Alexis. I read that comment and I was about to respond that, but yeah, got pulled into some other discussions. I think ORAN doesn't specify whether it has to be a single OCloud site cluster deployment, or is it some sort of a multiple distributed OCloud node cluster deployment, right? Which spans across the multiple OCloud site. It's not explicit in a sense that it says that it is for the single site versus multiple different OCloud sites. I don't see that kind of a demarcation that has been like mentioned in the ORAN spec, right? And maybe it's not needed either, right? So we will have one, like Alexis was explaining, we will have one single endpoint, that's the IMS, and let that decide whether that deployment and which exact location and the location IDs to be selected for provisioning based upon the capabilities and characteristics of the available resources, the deployment option. So I think that's how I see.
No, but the way because when you define the intent, you would probably kind of identifying several kind of tags to that particular intent, saying that okay, this is a OCloud instance, but I want to kind of spawn this particular cluster in all the sites that is tagged by so and so. So
you
that comes
in the high level intent, you will provide the requirements in a sense that I need so and so capabilities and characteristics, right? And then it's up to the IMS how it has to be fulfilled, whether it is fulfilled by one single OCloud site or would it require multiple different OCloud sites, and then requirements such as latency based requirements, right? I mean, all these will come as a set of requirements rather than I want to have a OCloud node cluster being deployed on this particular site or that particular site location.
No, but I think that you will definitely have some idea of, I mean, this will be kind of well planned in the sense that you won't be leaving it to IMS. So
we will have the topology, right, in the SMO. So absolutely, we will have that kind of a the details or the structuring in the SMO. But what I was after is with the IMS.
But you got, hang on, Alex. So there's a thing here, right? So the IMS is the fan out point, no doubt, right? If you're going to have multiple operations. But the geographical location of where that's going, that's part of the SMO intent. So just place it here. What sites you put them on, you know, maybe it's the IMS responsible for that. I don't think we've come to that conclusion, by the way. But certainly what we mean by location, right? You know, is location just simply geographical, or is it saying for these specific sites, right? So I think, you know, we can go back and look at the use cases for that, but certainly the intent, you should be able to mark an intent for a set of geographical locations, right?
Yeah, and I believe this is what is captured here. So
I would say
exactly
put
what
some
is captured.
No, I would say put a brackets there and put an S there. So it could be one location or multiple locations.
That's
where I don't disagree. I'm okay with this.
Yeah,
I'm okay with this.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I meant.
Stacia, you were
sorry. I was raising my hand for long. Guys, this is actually coming under homing and placement. This requirement which we are talking about is coming under homing and placement, which is one of the criteria which is being talked about even though right now it's manual, but automatic intent-based homing and placement when we go to that, Oren Alliance is not talking about intent driven, but that is actually something which we have to feed back. Again, in line to what we were talking about sometime before, right? So chicken and egg problem. So surely, I think once we have that, the maturity of the spec coming in, this will also be solved for sure. Right now, I'm with Alexei to have it as a placeholder and move on. Your point is right, Ravi. By the way, it is required to be thought about. So the current use case, I think we can still deliver it with a basic, we thought of one network function, right, to start with. So one cluster, one network function is actually what we can start with. And as we mature, as the Oren Alliance also matures, we can surely take that. So I'll put that under homing and placement and as a futuristic addition to what we are trying to do. That will be sufficing the entire part. That's my 2 cents on it.
So, Lux, do you have is this a response to this issue? Because if
Yeah.
not, I'd like to respond to it.
Just rather quick. Homing, I don't think it's necessarily
Yeah,
a homing and placement thing, right? Because that happens when you are deploying your NFs or the NF deployment happens. And for that, the very first condition is that the cluster should be existing, right? And which exact cluster to be selected for deploying your
Look,
NFs, right?
agreed. See, homing and placement, when I'm talking about, it's also cluster creation comes under homing and placement. There are 2 parts of homing and placement. One is for the NFO, which is where you find optimal subcloud to be deployed on or edge cloud to be deployed on. The other thing also is when you talk about geo-distributed cloud, right? Where your subcloud should be created or your cluster should be created itself can be one homing and placement also.
Yeah, I
So
think
both of them.
it's an after like some sort of a operation that happens after an exception saying I didn't find a right set of resources to be deploying your
Need not be.
applications there, right?
I'll actually give an instance of SON. We
Hey,
have something called self-confirmation network, right? I think it's going off the track, but we will talk about it maybe later.
Yep, sure.
If I may, the point here is that when there is a request coming from FOCOM to IMS, a location or a set of locations for that cluster are provided. Period. That's it, right? All the rest, it's not what I want to discuss just now because I have 2 minutes remaining. I don't disagree with all the discussion here. I just want to say that I think we agree with the principle that there is one or a set of locations for the cluster to be created. This is really the main goal. I think we agree.
That's what I was saying. Yeah,
right?
we can go with that right now. Yes. Proceed.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think one of the other point that was brought up, and it's a good point, is I think in the users template stories is captured the notion of personas. And Alok was asking, is this something defined somewhere? I believe SIG tried to define them, but they're not. I don't know where they stand. So do we want to keep persona as part of the user story, or should we remove them? I think that's the answer that I'm looking for now. I don't mind keeping them or removing them. Both is fine for me. I can't say for sure what is the exact definition of persona, although I know there are a couple of personas that SIG2 is using. Okay,
Maybe
silence is consensus. We keep them.
I would vote to remove because if it's not been defined yet, then maybe it brings more confusion than different.
Okay, sounds good. That's exactly why I was asking this. So let me.
What's this persona supposed to do in that? I'm sorry, I was.
Well, no, it's more from a user experience standpoint, right? When someone is going to look at what we're going to deliver, it's trying to help the user identify, okay, is this for me?
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I don't want to delete it. I just want to strike it through, but I don't know how we do strike through in this thing. Give me 1 second. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other question was, well, actually, it's 12. So I don't want to go in the other question because we're timing out.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I'll take it back. So give me a quick 30-second summary on what you want to do next, Alexis, with these 3. Or with this one.
Yeah. Well, with the 3, actually. So people, please continue coming up with, so create, delete, and OCloud registration. The 3 of them has been done to a similar way using the ORMAN orchestration use case document. please keep reviewing them offline. Let's try to iterate and let's try to get firm up between now and next week. I don't see major objection in what is written right now in the comments, but please, if you want to have some comments between now and next week, review them, and we'll finalize these 3 hopefully next week. That is my goal, Tim.
Okay. All right. Cool. Any other comments before we leave, guys? I see there's a link there, Seishu. So you should be able to receive the recording link on top of the page, Seishu.
Sure. You can give me a link of that. I'll page link perhaps. I'll look into that.
All right. So let me copy it and paste it.
Sure. Thanks, Tim.
Sure. All right, guys. Anything else before? And I don't update them. That comes from Bala and some other ones, so they're not updated. Talk to Bala. Okay. All right. Anything else, guys? All right. I will see you next week. Thanks. Good discussion. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone. Good day.